He turned down an offer to become imperial court virtuoso and rejected an offer to compose for the emperor at all, which is more than what happens now with these ex-rebel rock stars when they're offered their CBEs and they go, oh, it's such an honour to meet the Queen. And you get Sir Paul McCartney, who said, I'm normally a pacifist, but couldn't be while the war was on. You might as well be a vegetarian between meals. Then in 1812, Beethoven wrote a letter to a friend.
Yesterday, Goethe and I met the entire imperial family. I pulled my hat on my head and buttoned my overcoat. Goethe, hat in hand, stood at the side, bowing deeply. I gave him a thorough dressing down, showed him no mercy and reproached him for his sins.
But his most dramatic statement came with his Ninth Symphony. For years, he'd wanted to build a symphony around the Schiller poem An die Freude, which stated simply that all men were brothers. He finished it in 1823, and this time it was twice as long as any symphony before Beethoven.
The last movement is over 23 minutes long, longer than many whole symphonies, in which one of the most famous tunes of all time has to battle its way to be heard, and then emerges as a chorus. In itself this was original, as no one put choruses in symphonies, and while All Men Are Brothers might not seem very challenging, it reaffirmed an ideal that was unthinkable for the monarchies that ruled the old Europe, that a beggar was the brother of a prince, which may be why the theatre was packed for the opening, except for the royal box that was empty. And it is a fantastic tune, with two simple themes, brothers and joy. So what happened to it? It was used to sell cars, and as the anthem for the European Union, because it rolls off the tongue. Brothers, joy, Peter Mandelson.
Even worse are these James Last types who do their weedy versions of it, of which the worst must be Klaus Wunderlich, who did this.
How could anyone be that evil? It's ode to joy, not ode to wandering around B&Q in a stupefied daze. Despite the success of the Ninth Symphony, Beethoven was drinking heavily and his financial problems were getting worse, with the profits for his sell-out concert almost entirely taken up by expenses. And by this time he was so deaf that he carried around conversation books at all times for people to write in. At one point he had a fight with a waiter about a stew and covered him in gravy. After this he became grumpier than ever. He took to sitting in a bar on his own, furious if anybody came near him. A musician, Thomas Busby, wrote of him,
He sat in a corner by himself, drinking wine. A person sat near him. He looked steadfastly at the stranger and spat on the floor as if he'd seen a toad.
As well as the symphonies and concertos, hundreds of dances, sonatas, string quartets and fidelio, he also wrote dozens of Scottish songs such as Oh Swiftly Glides the Bonny Boat and Bonny Laddie Highlands Laddie. On top of that, his unfinished work amounts to more than all the stuff that was finished, and yet he said in his 50s,
I feel I have scarcely written a note.
In the 1820s, his ailments grew stronger. He got pancreatitis and cirrhosis of the liver, until eventually, in 1827, just back there, he died. And ever since then, the world has fought for his legacy.
For example, when Hitler was in power, a left-wing choir worked underground, performing Fidelio at secret venues, until they were raided by the Gestapo. But at the same time, the Nazis declared Beethoven
The schoolmaster of the nation. Beethoven concerts were performed for the Hitler Youth. They painted out his brown eyes to make them blue and lightened his complexion.
Then, during the Cold War, the East Germans started. In a conference in 1970, it was announced that Beethoven was
completely in accord with the 11th Feuerbach thesis of Marx.
How can we say for certain what Beethoven would have thought about if he was around today? He died in 1827. But we can say that he was able to write such original and extraordinary music because he was inspired by the times that he lived through. So inspired that even when those times depressed him, his music was able to convey that depression. Now, because it was music with no words, we can make of it whatever we like.
But how can music convey anything if you're like Justin Timberlake and get yourself sponsored by McDonald's? Would soul have had any impact if Aretha Franklin had sung, "You make me feel like a happy meal"?
We can't say for certain what Beethoven would think about the modern world or about the drama that's been Germany since he died. But we can say that if he was around today to introduce one of his own concerts, instead of saying, "This next piece comes in 5 movements," he'd say, "This next one is about proxy nobles and republicans who become scumbag emperors and women who run off with counts and bastard birthday cards and waiters who deserve to be covered in gravy and how I hate being dead. 1, 2, 3, 4.
For more on Beethoven, conduct yourself to the Mark Steele Lectures website at open2.net.